can see. Bene, good morning, buongiorno a tutti. My name is Corrado Paina. I'm the Executive Director of the Italian Chamber of Commerce of Ontario. I want to thank you for being here. This is the third appointment, as you all know. We're very happy, and I feel that we have to start thanking Astrid and Tiziana that have worked tirelessly, really, on the organization of these three events with ALMA. And I want to thank also Isabella. Sometimes people at the chamber don't have a face, you know, they should all appear with the video, within the video. Isabella is the person in charge of communication. So I want to thank Isabella and naturally, obviously all the staff of the chamber. Thank you. And thank you to all of you for having attended these three, let's call them episodes of ALMA. I've been to ALMA. It's a fantastic place. As I said the first time, ALMA is close to Parma. Parma is one of these places that it's impossible to explain the importance of a city that lives on food and the related industry. It's all about music, it's all about food, it's all about class, a taste, a pleasure of living, a lust for life. I went to a class of how to taste culatello in Parma, in a castle. The owners were producing culatello for Armani, from Armani to the Arab Emirates and so on. And it was incredible, really. And I realized that you have to eat sometimes this food, culatello in this case, for instance, like an ice cream. Because today, it means that you have to taste it several times. Today, in fact, we're going to talk about ice cream. I want to say that this, it's from 2016 that the Chamber has been working in promoting not just master classes, lessons, but also a way of living, a way of eating. Eating, as we know, I don't have to tell you, Chef Carlo-Maria Ricci will explain exhaustively what it means to eat in a certain way. He has an erudite preparation, encyclopedic culture, and he can tell you everything about food. But I can tell you, and I think we all know that today food is just more than eating and living socially. It's also about health. And that's why when you are in a city like Parma, that explain the history of products, certifies the source of products, that's something more important. It really touches several levels of your life. And health is a big section of eating well and living, in a certain way. In collaboration with ALMA, the International School of Italian Cuisine, we will talk about gelato. I just want to tell you a couple of things. From the 17th century, there are books about gelato. At the time, gelato was not called gelato. Italian people used to call agghiacciato, acqua ghiacciata, means, something like between, cold ice, maybe cold water, iced water, it was different, and they were sorbets. So the first book is by Latini, they say, a man that wrote about the history of sorbets and ice cream. I want to tell you another thing. Charles Dickens loved Italy, and he came to Italy several times. And at one point, he writes, my God, in Italy, they always eat ice cream. What a people of unwind, suckling inhabitants. The reality loved Italy, but he was right. We eat ice cream, not just on summer, we eat ice cream always. And I can just remember the beautiful picture of Audrey Hepburn in Roman holidays when she eats ice cream and she meets in Piazza di Spagna, who was the actor, maybe somebody will remember. In any case, I just want to tell you, ice cream is such a part of our life. It also forces, pushes to take some time and think about what we are doing. We've been eating, we've been feeling ourselves. Ice cream requires a moment of meditation also, a moment of reflection on what we are doing. So gelato is not just a sweet treat, but it's also refreshing and brings back childhood memories for most of us. Together with ALMA, we will learn about the history and the details of this wonderful Italian staple product. ALMA is an international school known around the world for the education it provides for chefs and sommelier. They learn through training programs at the highest level with the world's best teacher. ALMA is located, as I was saying, in Emilia-Romagna. Emilia-Romagna is the region that stretches from the wetland of the Po Delta down to the beach resorts of the Adriatic coast and across fertile plains where the signature ingredients of Italian cuisine are produced. Man, this text is so erudite, but I become very coy, and it's very long. So I want to go really to the core of the matter. Between eating and drinking in the region, the magnificent cities of Bologna, Parma, Ferrara, and Ravenna boast sumptuous Renaissance palaces, fresco, medieval, and Romanesque churches, and unique Byzantine artworks, which can all usually be enjoyed without lineups or crowds. ICO is very proud to have partnered with ALMA for this series of masterclasses, since we both share very similar values and goals for the promotion of authentic Italian products, as well as the farm-to-table concept, which safeguards local excellencies. I would like to thank all our participants on Zoom for being here today, as well thanks those who are following us through Facebook Live, including the students of the George Brown Culinary School and Centennial College School of Hospitality, Tourism and Culinary Arts. The masterclass today will be led by Chef Carlo-Maria Ricci. Now, I think you are familiar with him, who many of you already know because he was running the first two classes. Chef Ricci is a two-time graduate of ALMA, and after a thorough formative series of international experiences, he currently shares time between his freelance consulting practice and working as an ALMA chef ambassador. Before we begin, we wanted to share some exciting news with you about our upcoming events. Vinis web dinner on Thursday, July the 30th at 1 p.m. Vinis is an Italian startup that organizes guided wine tours in Tuscany. Together with a team, you will have the opportunity to visit an ancient and authentic wine cellar and discover all the secrets and quality of Tuscan wine. We thank Richard here, another member of the chamber, that organized this very exciting and interesting event. Don't miss your chance to learn more about Tuscan wines through this guided webinar. Visit our social media channels to register for this event. In September, we're planning two very exciting events in collaboration with prominent chefs who will show us how to prepare their own version of a panino gourmet, a traditional Italian panino made with high quality ingredients. The first event will take place on September 22nd from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. and will feature Michelin star chef Claudio Sadler from Milan. The two-session series will conclude on September 29, same time, with another prominent local chef. And other exclusive suggestions on how to turn your panino into a truly unique gastronomic experience to be launched citywide. Keep following our social media channels. We will send out more information. And now I think, and I apologize for this long speech, it's time to ask Chef Ricci to take the stage and begin the class. Get ready to take notes and ask lots of questions. Let's start. Chef Carlo-Maria Ricci, please.
Thank you very much, Deputy Executive Director Paina, for the introduction. They're always very, very fascinating. I would like to really listen to you for a lot longer. So it's a shame they are so brief. There's always a lot of information and a lot of passion, which is what I really enjoy. And at the same time, thank you to everybody at the Italian Chamber of Commerce of Ontario who they've been very kind and very proactive in organizing these events and making them like very much a pleasure to attend. And obviously, thank you very much to all the attendees. Today, we'll be talking about gelato. We'll be giving you as much information as possible about this wonderful, wonderful food, truly Italian as well in a way. It's a lesson that we've recently revamped in a way with extra information. So I'm very, very excited to share with you. So without further ado, here we go. A little bit of a historical introduction. So for as long as there have been food cookbooks or recipe books, there have been in most culinary culture, most cultures that have recorded their passion for food, there have been at least a couple more than ice creams or sorbets, because they were technologically very hard to make. There have been some sort of cool drinks, refreshing drinks, maybe snow-based, maybe ice-based, and they always drew a lot of attention, a lot of favors. So it isn't surprising that ice cream, or gelato, and the whole product class, as it is to this day, attracts a lot of favor. It's unusual in the mouth. It melts. It can have lots of consistency that they change really quickly. So it's a very engaging product, and it's sweet. There are let's call them indulging ingredients in it most of the time, so it is a treat. It is truly a treat. And as Executive Director Paina said, is also really a food that for some reason embeds itself perfectly in our memories. So we all have at least one gelato memory. I know I have a few. I grew up in Rome, and my first ice creams were eaten in Rome when I got to Rome, and about 6 were eaten on the steps of the Pantheon. So this is something that has never left me. Ice cream kind of brings me back there. So it's a beautiful food, really, really it is. But if we look at the actual evolution of ice cream or gelato in Italy, the first tangible documentation that tells us that something similar to current sorbets were consumed dates to around the 10th century. The Arab invasion of Sicily is where we see a lot of very interesting desserts being born in Italian culinary culture, and this is true also for sorbets. So the progenitors, if we can so say, of sorbets were introduced in Sicily by the Arabs, utilizing snow from Mount Etna. But making ice cream requires a lot of technology. Refrigeration, especially spot refrigeration, so on the moment, is very difficult to achieve. So the first studies took place in the 1500s, but we have to wait for almost the end of the 18th century to see something that really looked like a, let's call it gelato scene. In 1686, a very famous cafe called Café Procope opened in Paris, still open today, and it's kind of like the place where the sorbet craze started in France from. And at the same time, just a few years later, we know that there was very much something like a sorbet craze in Naples. And in this book called Lo Scalco alla Moderna, which is at the time was the cookbook to have, there is a lot of information about this. So we can say that something is already starting to happen. Like it's this product is starting slowly to embed itself into Italian culinary culture. Although we have to wait roughly another century for milk and cream based ice creams, sorry, I lost an S, to become a reality. They had been for about another, let's say another century, fairly present on gala menus, gala dinners, ceremonial banquet menus, and events of the sort, but they weren't really available to everybody. But slowly, in the following century and in the middle of the 19th century, we really see this product being part of Italian cuisine, Italian traditions, to the point that another very important food writer, a historical food writer called Giovanni Vialardi, writes about a gelato all'italiana, so a stylistic interpretation that could be very much identified with Italy. As with all food products that have a lot of success, we see the first commercialization and industrialization of ice cream or gelato take place in the 1940s, just before World War II. And we see the first ice cream on a stick being born. It was called Il Pinguino, or the penguin. It was it was commercialized extensively from a gelateria in Turin, which is still open to this day, and it's very much the first example of industrialized ice cream. When we talk about gelato, although we need to really make a distinction before we start, we need to talk about the difference between milk-based and water-based ice cream. So milk-based ice cream is what we would call gelato, and water-based ice creams, if we could so say, it's what we would call sorbetto and other things. They are different not only in nature, but also in utilization. Where sorbet exists, especially as a consumption habit, ice cream doesn't, and vice versa. So it's not that like they don't coexist in the same maybe shop or in the same area, in the same region or in the same occasions, but they are consumed in a different way. Sorbetto always had first of all, it was integrated into meals a lot more commonly. It's very good for cleaning palates, for cleansing, so it could be also utilized to break up the consequence of some courses. But ice cream is very much and has always been something consumed as at the end of a meal, or as a snack, or just simply as an indulgence, or in place of a meal as well. This is something that it isn't so uncommon, and we'll be talking about some of these differences also later on. Every single base, ice cream base, so the actual starting liquid is called base, a base of ice cream or a base of sorbet, will need a defining ingredient. While these are interchangeable, the ones for ice cream tend to be a lot more, if I could say, luxurious in a way, but also they express differently because of the union with cream, milk, and egg yolks. When we talk about sorbets or water-based ice creams, we tend to have a preference for fruit. Other ingredients can be used also, but fruits are really the go-to defining ingredient. Various additives can be utilized to mostly to control the thickness of the ice cream and its creaminess, or in easier terms, its stability when cold. But when we talk about artisanal products, we always have very, very short recipe lists. And this is something that has to be kept in mind when we talk about traditional Italian gelatos. How it's made. So milk-based ice cream are made very much like a creme anglaise that then is enriched with the characterizing ingredients. And in the case of water-based ice cream, we have bases that are very much the union of a sugar syrup and a flavoring or characterizing ingredients. Regardless of how they're made, every single ice cream base needs to be blended to be homogenized properly. So there are emulsions, they are perfect emulsions because of what they are: a sugar syrup with a vegetable juice, or excuse me, with a fruit juice, or a creme anglaise with an added ingredient. But the homogenization, the blending and homogenization are fundamental to achieve a very creamy result. So Italian ice creams don't tend to be ice creams with big ice crystals, pieces of like big pieces of characterizing ingredients inside. If you find them in there, they are always added at the end. They're never considered to be part of the original base. Pasteurization, obviously, is a step that has to take place in modern ice cream making, as it is blast cooling. And these two steps really are the first two that define modern gelato making. Okay, they're the ones in which technological advancement have been so prominent to the point that they almost changed the way of making ice cream. And the same is true for the churning. Okay, so ice cream has to be churned, which means that while the base is cooling to serving temperature, so it's going below zero, well below 0 Celsius, the ice cream base solidifies, like the ice crystals are formed inside of this base, but also a lot of air is incorporated. I say a lot, but there are ratios that have to be observed. And we'll talk about air gain or volume gain in a second. After ice cream has been churned, it always has to be hardened, okay? Which means that it has to be stored at a temperature just lower than its actual serving temperature. So we serve ice cream about minus 14 to minus 12 degrees Celsius, and we want to harden it at around minus 18. This allows for two things: better structure and better stability, thanks to the stabilization of very small ice crystals. After this, ice cream is ready to be served. Its shelf life depends very much on the ingredients and the pasteurization process or degree of pasteurization that they have been subject to. But pretty much we could say from a bird's eye view, this is how ice cream is made. When we talk about gelato, so especially about Italian tradition, we need to make an important distinction or a series of important distinctions between artisanal and industrial products. There are a lot of industrial products that champion Italian ice cream and Italian gelato around the world, and they're not necessarily bad. We're not saying that. This is not what we're trying to say, but we're trying to say that they are in stark contrast, or they live in a different realm compared to artisanal ice cream. Artisanal ice cream is always produced on site, most likely daily, most likely with very fresh ingredients that are also seasonal for the majority. Obviously, there are products like coffee, chocolate, vanilla that are not as seasonal as others, like could be, you know, all the fruit pastes and whatnot, or even the nut milks. You know, they're very seasonal products. They store longer, but they're seasonal, and they really characterize traditional artisanal gelato making. And this is not always the case for industrial practices, okay? So the appearance of the gelato is different, but also the actual composition of the product is very, very different. And it's easy to recognize an artisanally made gelato mostly by its looks, okay? It's gonna be very, very dull in color because the dilution with other ingredients, you know, white bases or sugar bases, but also the incorporation of air dulls the color. So real gelato should be somewhat dull in color, but still, you know, colorful in its own way. But when we talk about air gain or volume gain, we don't want too much of it, because otherwise we'll have an ice cream that will need a lot of fat to be stabilized, or a lot of other ingredients to be stabilized, but also something that will melt too fast. It will always break apart. And if there is too little, then we'll have a very, very hard product, okay? Something that doesn't conform to the creaminess of gelato. And this is easy, very easy, you know, on a visual level, because there are different examples of industrial ice cream that we all know, and artisanal ice cream is gonna stand very much afar from that. But also when we talk about gelato, so shops that sell gelato, we need to make the distinction between those that do make gelato following artisanal practices and those that choose to follow more traditional or practices that follow a sort of economy of scale. And they might appear like true gelato, but in a way, you know, there's a lot of them that doesn't allow them to be considered as being artisanal products. So, first round of questions. I'm sure there's quite a few. I'm ready for them, Astrid, when you want.
Thank you, Chef. So the first question is, if you go to a gelateria, how do you truly know that the gelato is artisanal?
We always say like smell silent, like smell, look, and taste. So you will have to smell fresh ingredients. Like gelaterias, like real gelaterias, really smell like milk, fresh fruits. It sounds odd, but like sugar, there is that. Secondly, look at the ice cream. It has to be as flat as possible in the tubs. Nothing that is kind of like protruding from the top. No bright colors. Nothing too visually intense. And then obviously when you taste, gelato is basically a frozen creme anglaise, so you should have those flavor of, I call them, of traditional pastry products, right? You are going to be able to taste it. Anything that is too pungent or too invasive, then it's definitely not going to be the case. And also consistency. If an ice cream doesn't melt, and there are ice creams that don't melt, you're off track. And then also something that once it hits your mouth, it starts melting right away without a feeling of oiliness or stickiness or density, then you know that the ice cream is real.
So is it typical then for industrial gelato to be very decorated?
Oops, pardon me. If you look in gelaterias, yeah, they tend to be very decorated, yeah, for sure. But you could find generally a plainer looking one, but for the most part, the visual impact will be quite big.
And in an industrial produced ice cream, if you read the ingredients list, is there any red flag when you read them, like that we all should be aware and avoid?
Yeah, for sure. So all the non-good fats that on the list that that help stabilize ice cream when they're cold, too many carrageenan, gums, guar, things like that. Too many of those, then you know that obviously the the ice cream is of an industrial process. But that said, there are if we talk about red flags like health-wise or ingredient list-wise, like as far as clean label goes, then there are certain culprits that we want to look at. But it's but if we look at artisanal gelato as a reality, then we want to like really try have as short list as possible. Sorry, that was a bit of a jumble jumble, but I hope you got the gist of it.
Thank you, Chef. If there's a follow-up question, I will let you know. We also received a question in regards to the difference between gelato and ice cream, but I think that we will talk about it a little bit later, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, or let's introduce it a little bit. So gelato is very much the Italian term for the preparation, and as most things that related to food, Italians have very specific approaches, and gelato is an artisanal product with its own characteristic. Ice cream is a term that kind of like under which a lot of different products fall, and gelato falls under it as well. But if we're thinking about like maybe like Scandinavian ice creams or even like American ice creams that are the ingredient lists are different, the ingredient lists, the ingredients utilized are different, the type of creams, the amount of creams utilized are different, the incorporation of air is different. So there's a lot of different aspects to be kept in consideration.
Okay, thank you. I think for now we can just move on to the next section and then we'll get back to the questions.
Excellent. So, when feeling like gelato, if you were to go to an Italian gelateria or an establishment that sells gelato, you would most likely be faced with different options. So gelato doesn't live in a vacuum. As we said, there are a lot of water-based products, and sorbetto is probably the most famous of them. Water-based, so we understand the ingredients. What we want to say about sorbetto as such is that the difference between water-based gelato and sorbetto is that sorbetto is churned at a much lower speeds, okay? And the final product can almost be drunk out of a straw. It's watery, it's looser, okay? There isn't as much air in there, and generally, not always, the actual flavor of the fruit utilized is a lot more intense. Another product that you would find is called semifreddo. Semifreddo means half cold, almost cold, partially cold, okay? And first of all, it's not churned, but it's made utilizing most ingredients, or almost all the ingredients that would go into ice cream, plus a few more. So you would kind of have like a recipe of gelato to which something has been added. And those things are a specific amount of whipped cream and a cooked meringue. And that allows it to be almost a spoonable dessert, not almost, a spoonable dessert, something that could be also served on a plate. There are some consistency that can be spooned on a cone, but mostly is something that you would eat out of a cup or a container or in a plate. They're very creamy, very, very creamy because of the presence of meringue. They're also incredibly velvety, which means that they really coat your mouth with this soft sensation. They don't take any churning, as we said. They are served at a slightly higher temperature than gelato, still below 0, and they are very, very, very luxurious. So they will always be higher in fats and sugars. Not all gelaterias will have them, but some will definitely offer customers these alternatives as well. And then if we further go into the realm of water-based products, then we need to talk about granita. Granita is in some way similar to sorbetto, but is really really different itself, because it's not subject to a churning process. So it's allowed to cool or freeze statically, which means that it's allowed to freeze in large tubs that are agitated at regular intervals according to the type of crystal that one is looking for. So granita could be with very large pieces of ice or very small pieces of ice, but never as small as the one of sorbet. So it won't result as it won't feel like a velvety product. You could really feel the actual crystal of ice. And this is where, especially in the south of Italy, in the region of Sicily, gelato, or one of the products of this family, becomes part of a meal. So it isn't unusual during the summer in the south of Italy, especially in Sicily, to eat granita for breakfast, generally with a brioche bun next to it. You find almond, mulberry, both the white and the red types, and also lemon being served next to brioches. Sometimes coffee, sometimes you find coffee granita with cream served for breakfast instead of cappuccino, for example. Coffee granita with cream you can also eat throughout the day, but it's really like, when I was saying that gelato really found many different interpretations and is not just an indulgence, this is really what I meant. It's something that you can eat, and it is eaten in place of a meal as well. Gremolata is very similar to granita, but is made with fruit puree, so is a lot denser in structure. And gratta checca is another version of an ice-based, or in this case, a hand-shaved or a shaved ice-based preparation that, although looks very different from the ones that we've seen up until now, is typical from the town of Rome. Is almost like the street food version of gelato, of Roman gelato. Is always flavored with syrups, or fruit syrups, not juices, so very sweet, and sometimes is topped with pieces of fruit. So the toppings can be as exotic as coconut or pineapple, but you don't be surprised if you find a sour cherry and watermelon one, or sour cherry and strawberry one, because they are very much a reality. Unique product, very interesting, and it's really hard to explain, but literally, like, to make it, you would need a massive block of ice and somebody willing to shave it by hand. So if you were to go to Rome in the summer, hunt it down, because it's unique. It's a very interesting product. But gelato isn't just, as we said, it takes many different forms. So it isn't just on a stick, on a cone, in a cup. Gelato can be a cake. Gelato can be utilized to dress other preparations like fruit salads or some desserts. In some places, in some gelaterias, they specialize in making very fancy ice cream cups with not many added ingredients, but some, but always in line with traditional gelato making ingredients. So you could find maybe different flavors of ice cream, a little bit of whipped cream, some biscuits in there, and maybe a little bit of caramelized nuts or chocolate syrup or ganache or fruit syrup and whatnot. Ice cream can be turned into dessert. Water-based gelatos can be turned into like icicles. Basically, in Italian they're called ghiaccioli, and they're always very simple in flavor. Like, think about, once again, lemon, orange, maybe sour cherry, mint. Okay, but don't think about anything more exotic than that. Okay, and interestingly, ice cream is something that you eat on a spot, so you eat it in gelaterias and whatnot, but it's also something that Italians do take home quite a bit. And on the bottom right, you have this kind of big styrofoam container. This is called a vaschetta di gelato, and they are what Italians really like take to friends' houses, or they take it home to have as a dessert after a meal. And they are probably one of the most predominant ways Italians consume ice cream, if not eating it in gelateria. And then ice cream can also enter different consumption moments, like in the case of affogato. Affogato is nothing more than a way to end the meal with your coffee and a little sweet indulgent by having both a little like scoop of gelato and coffee together. So you will literally drain or drench or drown, because affogato means drown a little bit of ice cream with a shot of espresso. And you can see kind of from this section that we've just gone through, these excursions that we just had, the ice cream or gelato is one thing, but also it's many other, like it takes a lot of forms, and it almost looks like Italians have found as many ways as possible to fit gelato in different consumption moments, so that they could enjoy it as much as possible. And to a certain extent is very much so. What needs to be understood also is that gelato has and hasn't got a regional connotation. So you will find, first of all, you will find gelato all year round, and consumption habits really now go from February till November. But it isn't unusual if you feel like it in the winter to have a quick scoop of gelato. Like, gelaterias do sell gelato in the winter as well, not as much as they do in the summer, of course, but they do. And if you were in Sicily, for example, you would find like sorbetos made with lemon, with almonds, which are local productions, like local ingredients. You would find maybe nut ice creams made with pistachio. You wouldn't find much of a hazelnut or a walnut because they are more traditional from the north. So if you were to go to Piedmont, for example, you would find hazelnut ice creams. You would find gianduja, so hazelnut and coffee and chocolate together, sorry, and cocoa mass together. You would find more chocolate-based ice cream, more cream-based ice cream, and whatnot. But you know, so there is this regional component. But at the same time, you would find the whole spectrum throughout the country. This is also very true. So some regionality, some, but not as stringent as with other product classes, like for example bread, as we've seen in the past lesson. And I'm ready to answer more questions if there are any.
Yes, there are quite a few actually in the chat. So going back to the ingredients, one question was, in Italy, do any gelaterias use milk powder instead of like fresh milk as they might do here in Canada?
Okay, good question. So in modern gelato making, milk powder can be one of the ingredients. So not the main ingredient. So they would still use milk instead of water, but some would add a little bit of milk powder to stabilize the ice cream. So adding dry matter without adding any other powders or any other additive. And this is important because balancing out the recipes for ice cream or balancing out a gelato recipe is actually a science. So it's a mathematical formula. You will need to sit down with a calculator, understanding what you want to put in there. And by knowing the dry matter, the fat and the sugar component, and also the water component of all your ingredients, you will be able to balance all recipes out to the point that you could have a whole display with exactly the same consistency. And this is where the art lays. This is where Italian gelato making really becomes a bit of an art.
And are nut-flavored granitas, such as almond or pistachio, a more recent concept? Are the fruit ones more traditional?
Oh, that's a very good question. So, you would find almond granita, not pistachio granita. You would find pistachio ice cream just because of the way the nut works. Like it's much easier to make almond milk than it is to make pistachio milk because of the actual physical and chemical composition of the nuts. But in the regions where you find almond granita and pistachio ice cream, you find that they're actually the more traditional recipes that date back quite some time. But you would also find, for example, lemon in the same area. So if we're talking about Sicily, for example, you would find these three products: lemon granita, almond granita, and ice cream pistachio, gelato pistachio. But you might also find, for example, products with fruit that are maybe not so typical of the region, or maybe they have a much shorter season. Like for example, strawberries in Sicily have a very short season because of the heat and the type of conditions. So you would find that those maybe are a little bit more, not unusual, but you could say not as traditional. So we could call them a little bit modern. But if you were to go to Sicily, for example, and find, I wouldn't say chocolate, it doesn't work, but maybe coconut or mango, then you know that those are very much more modern approaches, simply because those products are not found traditionally in Sicilian agriculture. So it's the real answer to the question is a yes and no. You have to look at exactly what the product is, and then you kind of be able to, by looking at the agricultural production and the actual output of the region or of the place where you are evaluating the flavors in, then you would get a good answer whether they are traditional or not.
And are there any certified gelati, like with the pasta and the bread?
Not as such. There are a lot of traditional products, but there isn't a certified gelato. There are a lot of certified ingredients that go into gelato. So specific hazelnuts, specific almonds, specific pistachios, and so forth. And maybe even some certified fruits. You know, there are certified, as far as Italy goes, I think there's 6 or 8 lemons. There's a watermelon, there's a specific type of melon, there's apples, there's cherries, there's peaches. So they would find their way into gelato.
There's another question in the chat. I'm just going to read it because it's a little bit longer. So is there a gelato that is considered superior? For example, due to the sourcing of the milk, I assume that Canadian gelato made by an authentic gelateria is different than tasting gelato in Italy. Is one better than the other?
Very good question. So there are better gelatos, absolutely, the ones that stand higher on the podium for sure. Not for, say, for example, utilizing a specific milk for a specific cow. So let's say you wouldn't say the Guernsey necessarily makes better than Simmental. Okay, I'm talking about milk provenience. Okay, but I'd say if you look at the freshness and the quality of the ingredients, and then the actual ice cream making techniques or the approaches utilized, you could say that wherever you are, you could make gelato that stands a cut above the rest. But you would have to know how to do it, obviously. But I would say that gelato, no matter where you make it, will stand above the others. And then for sure, gelato in Canada would taste different from gelato in Italy, but also gelato from different areas of Italy would taste different, simply because the environment makes the taste of the food. So in Canada, for sure, you have amazing milk, so that would make very good ice cream. And then you would need the techniques to produce it, and the other ingredients. So you need the right eggs, the right maybe nut paste, the right chocolate and whatnot. But you can make fantastic ice cream for sure. And yes, it would taste different.
And just one more question before we move on to the last part of the presentation. So is it true that in order to tell if the gelateria is good or not, there's like a taste test with pistachio, like it's the litmus test of gelato, and that if you can't nail the baseline, then it's a good indication of the quality of the product?
Okay, so depending who you ask, you will have different answer for regarding what is the actual litmus test. But I always say crema, so the vanilla based or the cream ice cream, chocolate and pistachio are the three flavors that will tell you whether somebody is speaking the truth, let's say. For sure, I would say that those are the one. It's difficult. It's more difficult on fruits because obviously it's very good quality frozen fruit purees are available. But when you go down to the basics, like can you make a good creme anglaise? Is your ingredient selection right? Can you churn it properly? Can you stabilize the ice crystal? And then when it comes to pistachio, where are you sourcing it from? Because there is a lot of pistachio that is made with a good quantity of almond paste. So if it tastes even remotely as almond, you're in the wrong place.
Oh, that's good to know. That's good to know. Thank you. I think you can move on with the last part of the presentation, and then we'll save some questions for the end.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So when we talk about other variants of ice cream, so other types of ice cream, we need to stop on at least three, which are becoming either very popular or they're becoming very popular. The first one is ice cream made with liquid nitrogen. So it's a normal ice cream base that is cooled really, really quickly, utilizing liquid nitrogen, which is a liquid that stands naturally or at minus 196 degrees. So it evaporates at room temperature, really makes this beautiful or scenic cloud of smoke, of cold smoke. It's used mostly in restaurants and makes a very interesting ice cream, very, very smooth, very small ice crystals, very creamy, not as cold, bizarrely, because it's done so quickly and is not allowed to harden, so it's made and served. One of the other ones is rolled ice cream, which has become very, very popular, although the initial base is nothing like ice cream base. So it's more like first of all, it can be made with condensed milk, which is another ingredient. It's not actually making an ice cream base, but also it takes no churning whatsoever, so it has no air incorporation, so it's very dense. And on the other end of the spectrum, as far as density and air incorporation, is soft ice, which contains a lot of air but needs a lot of other ingredients in order to be stabilized with that amount of air into it. And they are here to say that there are very different ways. As for Italians, there are many different ways of seeing ice cream. There are very different ways with which ice cream evolved, and they're not right or wrong, they're just different. But it's interesting to be able to tell the differences between traditional Italian gelato and what is not. And all these approaches really are not in their own way. And obviously gelato finds its way into menus, onto menus. It's featured heavily on many menus. It can be part of a dish, especially with the advent or the explosion of molecular gastronomies in the 90s and the consequence of this approach being adopted by many restaurateurs. We find savory ice cream into a lot of restaurant menus, either savory based or savory ice cream with vegetables or extra virgin olive oil based can be part of a dish. And they are, while not traditional, they are a way of reinterpreting tradition. So they can add flavor ingredients, or they can, especially on plates that are destructurized, they decompose, they can be acted as, you know, one of the ingredient and give a new mouthfeel, show a new approach. But more traditionally, you would find something called il servizio del gelato, which is when gelato is utilized as the dessert, especially cream-based ice cream. You know, we spoke about the crema or cream-based ice cream or vanilla ice cream being the litmus test, and here we're really talking about it. It isn't, some restaurants specialize in really dishing out a part of larger volume, like big amounts of ice cream to diners, and then they allow them to dress this ice cream with other things, chocolate ganaches or fruit syrups, biscuit crumbles, chocolate crunch, and whatnot. And this is a very traditional way of serving ice cream, and it's maybe more in line with some of our traditions, is more in line with a scenic, the scenic approach of putting ice cream on a dish, but with more traditional approaches. And they are both a reality, but for very different reasons. And we open saying that gelato is, you know, kind of wins favors left, right, and center. And when we actually look at some economic data, we see this confirmed. Like there has been, in 2018, there's been 16 billion euros of gelato eaten, you know, and the increase on, you know, year to year on 2017 has been a 6%. And it's quite a chunk of, you know, of what is consumed out of home consumption. Interestingly, there is still, there are a lot of ice cream gelaterias around the world. There's about 108,000, over 100,000. A lot of them are still linked to our strong Italian ownership, which is something to be very, proud and excited about. Although the big growth markets are all obviously in Asia, Southeast Asia, and Oceania. It's interesting when we look at total global turnover to see that Italians alone kind of account for almost 17.5% of it, 17.5% of global consumption and 30% of European consumption. So you can really tell the Italians do adore ice cream and eat a lot of it. About 6 kilos per year, which is quite a bit of ice cream. Although I'm sure many are well over that. And there are 39,000 shops selling ice cream or gelato in Italy. 10,000 of them are specialized gelaterias, which means that they sell gelato only. You find gelato, although served in cafeterias and bars, that also serve other things, but might have, you know, an offer of gelato integrated in their core offer as well. Italians adore and to this day consume for the majority very traditional flavors. So chocolate, hazelnuts, pistachio, cream-based fior di latte, so just stabilized milk, basically sweet milk, stracciatella, which is fior di latte with bits of chocolate frozen through it when it's extracted from the ice from the machine, from the churner. Lemon, those are they're very much the ones that go for the majority. Interestingly, though, there are a lot of new trends emerging. First, health-conscious ice cream. So ice cream with not as many sugars or not as many fats, and you need very skilled gelatieri to make these. But also vegan options are starting to appear a lot more. So nut milks can work very well, and the absent, you know, the culture, a strong culture of water-based ice cream makes these products possible as well. And also we're starting to see slowly, though, but we're starting to see them, I have to say, more exotic and more foreign flavors. So it isn't unusual. Don't think about just mango or coconut. Think about like think about carcadè. Think about the desire to really recreate flavor profiles that are not Italian whatsoever. And that is happening, is definitely happening, is something that we see quite a bit. two things are booming at the moment. One of them is this type of ice cream shop, which is called Gelateria, which essentially would be a gelateria that also produces part of its own ingredients, mainly milk, cream, and eggs. And we spoke about vaschetta earlier on, and the concept of the styrofoam containers to take away is booming. Italians always ate it, but because of the increase of popularity of delivery and takeaway and consumption of, out of let's say hospitality products in the home, then vaschettas are really becoming more and more requested. So some gelaterias are specializing in this as well, especially in takeaways. And remember that the 24th of March is Gelato Day. It's a very interesting day to remember because there's a lot of initiatives that happen in Europe, especially in Italy, around gelato, but the net goes berserk about this. And it's very, very interesting to read about it, because follow it, because there's really quite a bit that goes on. There's a lot of initiatives that happen around gelato on this day. And it's been going on for almost 10 years now. And it's, it's a way of really, I think it also drives consumption quite a bit, because we've seen that from the 2010s onwards, there's been a definite increase in gelato consumption. So maybe this is doing something for it as well. And sadly, this is the end of today's lesson. I'm sure I'm gonna go eat a gelato right now, because it's kind of like my mouth is asking for it. But and let's answer some questions first. I'm sure there's a few more.
Yes, I would also like to have some gelato now, but I will wait until the end. There's a few questions. So one is an interesting question. Are there any gelaterias or gelaterie or chefs in Italy that use a Paco jet?
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't say gelaterias, but a lot of restaurants use Paco jet. Ice cream churners are very big. They take up a lot of space, and when you don't have that much footfall and you need to make ice cream, especially with a more gastronomical approach, so they hold their shape better, they fill the mouth better, because Paco jet based ice creams are, they have a completely different way of melting in the mouth, and you'll find that there's a lot of Paco jet utilized, but I'd say more in restaurants than in gelaterias.
Okay, what about if you make gelato at home? First of all, can you make gelato at home? And what are some tips that you could offer to make gelato at home?
You can make amazing gelato at home. Don't be discouraged. There are fantastic benchtop ice cream makers that work very, very, very well. They work particularly well for traditional ice cream recipes. So look for I would say Italian sources for gelato recipes, but not only. There's a lot of interesting gelato recipes, but I would say look for Italian sources for that, and really do follow the recipe by heart. Learn how to do a creme anglaise very, very well. Learn how to set it, not to overcook it, but especially not to undercook it. Understand the right ratio of ingredients. So understand when it's becoming too hard, it's churning too hard, it's churning too soft, and then once you pull it out of the machine, I know we said harden it, because in professional environments you want to harden it, but in the case of home consumption, because it's really hard to achieve not so much the holding temperature but the serving temperature, there are almost no home freezers that stay between -12 and 14. So once it's churned, try to serve it right away. I would say that's the best way to enjoy it at home.
And what is the process of variegato and folding in flavors? And the second question, is a yogurt ice cream more of a modern addition?
Oh, good. So the variegato means adding ingredients to the ice cream as it's churning, as it's finishing to churn, or as you extract it from the machine. So you would add a very dense syrup or a very dense liquid. So they would then once it goes into ice cream and the ice cream goes into the hardening phase, it doesn't harden completely. So they have very high sugar contents or other ingredients that don't allow it to solidify. And you want to do it at the very end of the churning process, but I'm talking about 3-4 turns of the machine. You don't want it to become part of the ice cream. So if you're putting cherry into vanilla, you don't want the ice cream to become pink. You just want the streak into it. So do it either in the last 2 or 3 turns, or do it as you extract it from the machine. And then what was the second question? Sorry, Astrid?
Is yogurt ice cream more of a modern addition?
There have been yogurt. Okay, so yogurt flavored ice cream has always been there. Yogurt ice cream, so frozen yogurt, is a more modern approach.
Okay, so the difference between yogurt flavor and frozen yogurt. Okay.
Yeah, so you have gelato that also has an addition of yogurt into it, and you get the flavor of yogurt. But if you're thinking about frozen yogurt as a product, then it's a lot more modern.
There's a question about the pacojet. So isn't the use of a pacojet similar to the methods of producing grattacheca? So does that mean that there's a flexibility in the definition of gelato production?
No, not exactly. So a pacojet is a cryogenizer. So it's something that homogenizes products that are cold, almost all frozen. So it would really homogenize. When you shaving ice cream doesn't homogenize the ice, also because it can be homogenized, because water, it's by itself, it can be homogenized. Homogenizing means like reducing the particles of matter to a consistency so small that they become something else, like a paste or a pulp, okay? And in the case of ice, no, because you're just shaving ice cream and then you're putting a syrup on top. So actually, it's the actual feeling in the mouth is completely different. An ice cream made with a pacojet is very smooth, very velvety. Grattacheca is very crunchy.
And just one more very specific question. One of the pictures that you used was that a stroncatura alle sarde congelato alla cipolla di Tropea.
Yes, that's exactly the dish. Yeah.
Could you just quickly explain in English what that was?
Okay, so it's let's go back. Let's go to this slide. Okay, so as we said, there is savory ice cream finds its way into savory dishes as a component of like a flavor component. So this is in itself the dish of pasta that you see. So it's a pasta made with sardines, fresh sardines, and breadcrumb as a dressing, which is very, very traditional from the south of Italy. You would find it along the regions of Sicily and Calabria as well, where you will also find, in the case of cipolla di Tropea, you will find this onion, which is a red onion that grows very early in the season, always stays fresh, and it's very, very sweet. And this is very much a way of reinterpreting tradition. So you get traditional dish, traditional flavors put together in a completely different way, and boom, you have a new dish. And this is one of the ways the savory ice cream has been utilized very, very successfully in Italy at the moment. It's one of the iconic dishes.
Perfect. Thank you for explaining. I think this is it for today for the questions.
Fantastic. So this was a very interesting lesson, but also fantastic series of lessons. I hope it was informative and I hope it was enjoyed. I know I had a lot of fun, so I really hope that it's something we all shared.
Thank you so much, Chef. I would like to ask our Executive Director, Corrado, to say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Astrid. Again, I want to thank Astrid and Tiziana and Isabella for the incredible work for these 3 lessons. And, you know, I kneel in front of such knowledge. You know, Chef Carlo-Maria Ricci is really a source of knowledge. And it's so beautiful when you know what you're eating, but you also know the history of what you're eating. And I apologize to the audience. I forgot the name of Gregory Peck. That was the actor of Roman Holidays. How could I forget? My mother was in love with him and she talked to me about the actor every day. I loved him too, actually. Again, I'm sorry that we have to bid farewell to Chef Carlo-Maria Ricci and to Alma. We had 3 beautiful moments, 3 beautiful experiences. I hope we're going to renew soon this visit and these meetings by Carlo here to Toronto. Hopefully, you know, the next time we're going to see each other physically, we're going to meet here in the city or maybe in Parma, who knows. I thank all the audience. I thank everybody, and I'll see you soon. I remind to everybody the event on Thursday, Venice, and thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.